Hello and welcome to this deep dive into how a high growth AI SaaS startup was able to improve their competitive win rates and shorten sales cycles using Playwise HQ's competitive intelligence platform. While this presentation is based on a case study with one of Playwise HQ's customers, Airgentic, really the purpose of this video is to share some of the key takeaways and lessons that Airgentic learned as they went about modernizing their competitive intelligence platform and process. So to start, it's important to acknowledge the reality of competing in AI markets, or really any software market for that particular matter. And that is that competitive pressure isn't occasional, it's a permanent fixture of the markets that we operate in. What I mean by that is you aren't just facing off against competitors when you're in a meeting, when you're doing your demo, when you're sending your final proposal. That competitive pressure is constantly there. It's there before the prospect even engages with your company. And that's because, more buyers today are doing even more research than ever before they reach out, pick up the phone, request a demo, etc. You need to flip the script in your mind and start thinking about the competitive pressures from the very moment someone goes, I have a problem that I'm looking to solve. They're going to tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. They're still doing Google searches. They're trying to understand what solutions exist in the market that can help them solve their problem and deliver an ROI. So from your point of view, if you don't understand all of your competitors and how they're positioning themselves in the market, you can't possibly put forward your best position and you can't optimize your own collateral and marketing strategy. In addition to that, there are new competitors constantly entering markets, especially ones such as AI market where Airgentic play. There are a lot of new companies that are taking advantage of these large language models, using them to create solutions that are specific for different roles and different industries. And on top of that, you also have existing competitors who are now adding more and more AI capabilities because they recognize the sheer potential that some of these solutions can provide. Differentiation can expire very fast. If you're in a market and today you've got a set of features that deliver a unique value proposition to your prospects, to your clients, to your market, that isn't a set standard. That isn't going to last forever. That can and it does change very, very quickly. So if you're relying on Intel that's 6 months out of date, that competitor may now have a solution that is much more on parity with what you offer. It may exceed what you offer, and you need to make sure that you and your AEs are aware of that. I've already touched on this a little bit, but buyers compare earlier. They are turning to tools like ChatGPT, etc. With those tools, they're able to do a deeper level of evaluation than they were previously. Instead of merely asking what tools exist in this market, they can provide these tools and say to ChatGPT, hey, my business looks like this. We're trying to achieve this. This is our budget. This is the type of headcount we have to support an implementation or a type of solution. What's the best tool for us? It's very specific. It's very personalized. If you take the CRM market as an example, someone might say that Salesforce is the best CRM. But is Salesforce the best CRM for a team of 3 AEs in a very small company? Probably not. If you give a large language model that kind of context, the size of your company, it's going to give a much more personalized response. So you're getting buyers who are coming to you with a lot more knowledge and a lot better understanding of what they're actually looking for. So I want to give a little bit about background on Airgentic so you can understand the journey they went through and build on some of those concepts that we introduced at the start. So Airgentic essentially build conversational AI tools designed for accuracy, trust, and real-world deployment. They leverage the internal knowledge of their customers to handle sales and support type questions. So for example, they have quite a lot of customers in the manufacturing space who provide motors and boats and all different types of equipment. If you're one of their customers and you have a problem, you can now use Airgentic to ask a very specific question, and it's going to have the knowledge of their help center documentation, of their PDF guides, of their technical specifications, so that it can provide very actionable and insightful information to their end customers and internal stakeholders as well. So they are a B2B organization and they have a product that is very well received and it's being used by a lot of customers, but they need to scale. And they also need to make sure that when they scale, they remain clear and consistent when competitors are popping up. What are some of the challenges that Airgentic identified and why did they look to the market for a competitive intelligence platform? Put simply, creating battle cards the old way took a lot of time, days, sometimes weeks. And when you operate in this market where new competitors are coming up all the time, you can't possibly cover them all to the depth that you want if you're taking a manual approach. So while they did have some battle card collateral and competitive intelligence for their top 2, 3, 4 kind of competitors, there was a lot of other niche players or a lot of new players that were popping up that they just lack coverage for. In addition to that, they were finding that their knowledge ended up scattered. They'd start with a centralized doc, but then they would hear something about a competitor and they'd email it to themselves or one of their colleagues. There'd be a message in their Slack channel, and there was no single source of truth where they can go, hey, I just want to go to one place and understand everything we know about this particular competitor, their strengths, their weaknesses, etc. Because of that, you end up with inconsistent answers in live deals. So if there's not one source of truth, what one person says in one call might be different from another call, etc. And you obviously want to avoid that ambiguity, because if you introduce ambiguity into a sales cycle, you're only doing yourself a disservice. So why does this become a revenue problem? Obviously, at the high level, there's losing deals and the number of deals that you do lose. If you have a better competitive intelligence process and you can identify competitors earlier, you can be more confident in terms of how you position against those competitors. You therefore are in a better position to win a greater number of deals overall. And while Airgentic certainly have seen an uptick in the number of deals they're winning, there's other kind of hidden drivers or hidden levers that people often forget about. I think one of the big ones is obviously a longer sales cycle. If you can shorten the sales cycle because you can anticipate competitors, you can position better against competitors, and you shorten the sales cycle by, a month, 2 months, whatever the time frame might be, that's capturing revenue earlier. Not only that, also capturing deals with less discounting. If you have to discount to win a new business because you didn't understand the competitive situation you were in, then when the renewal comes up, that customer is going to expect a discount on the renewal. If you have a new module to sell them, they're also going to expect a discount on the new module. So thinking holistically about this revenue situation, not just looking at, hey, do we win more deals, but all of the other sub-steps in between. And then as part of this, you begin to understand that competitive intelligence and the enablement of your team is an operational outcome. It's not a project. It's not a one-off heroic thing that we pin on the wall, because it's continual. It's ever evolving. Every single deal that you win or lose should feed back into the system so that your team are better prepared from a sales perspective, so that you better understand your competitors, so that you can position better. But also on the product front, if you identify gaps or new opportunities where you can add more value, you're capturing that intelligence from these deals, feeding it back into the system. So what did Airgentic actually need? They didn't need another document repository, right? They didn't need a Google Drive folder, or they didn't need an intranet where they were just going to cut and paste a bunch of information that people would look at once, and then 6 months later they'd go back to it and realize that it was out of date. They didn't need static battle cards that were going to be immediately outdated because they didn't have that feedback cycle. They didn't need a system that relied on big, chunky quarterly updates. They needed something that was more nimble, faster, that reflects the market they're working in, but also allows them to crowdsource from across their organization all of the different intel they pick up. Someone sitting in customer success who manages the relationship post-implementation is also going to have valuable insights to add into a battle card, not just the person who sold them the deal at the start. The person who does technical enablement might hear something from that customer about how they're also considering looking at another solution in another area of their business, or that they weren't really happy with a particular outcome. That kind of intelligence is also really valuable to capture. Airgentic, being a fast-growing startup with minimum human capital, couldn't rely on 100% manual processes. They just don't have the amount of bandwidth to focus on it, right? They're out there, they're building the product, they're selling to their customers. They didn't want more busy work. What they actually needed was competitive clarity at scale. With Playwise HQ, they're able to achieve that. For Airgentic, this means that when a new competitor pops up, how can they quickly get enough information as a starting point so that their account execs, their sales teams are armed with the information that they need to have an informed conversation about that and to position against that competitor. They need a single source of truth. They don't want to go, is it the PDF document from 3 months ago, or the Slack thread that we were talking about 2 weeks ago, or was it the Google Drive folder someone created last year that's relevant? One source of truth, one place to go. and intelligence that compounds so that everyone can contribute, which is kind of what we've been talking about. So what changed with Playwise HQ for Airgentic? I think the big reason is that it was designed for dynamic markets and sales teams, not a static competitor list. And it's also not designed for analysts. It's not meant to generate a 101-page PDF with all the minutiae that salespeople just don't need to know and don't really care about. Airgentic, essentially, they wanted to start with a tool that would centralize their intelligence, allow them to use AI-generated battle cards, which is one of the core functionalities in Playwise HQ, to very quickly and easily create their core list of competitors, then also to be able to spin up additional competitors as and when they see them in deals. Because Playwise HQ has the context of Airgentic as part of the onboarding process, all of these battle cards that are created, they're not generic. They're giving real talking points, real objection handling strategies that are relevant to Airgentic, their products, their services that they sell. So with this, they were able to cover 3 times as many competitors. As I mentioned before, initially they were covering the top 3, 4, 5 competitors, and they didn't have time to cover all of the niche vendors, all of the new vendors who were popping up. Leveraging AI, they can quickly and easily expand their capability and coverage in just a couple of minutes. Then to create that feedback cycle with Playwise HQ, you can capture insights from deals in 2 particular ways. One, field intelligence, people contributing commentary back to the battle card that would, could be something like, hey, I recently was speaking with this prospect who mentioned that they were also looking at this alternative solution. They liked that alternative solution for these reasons. Or there's a new vendor that's aggressively going after this market, and we've heard from prospects that they're discounting on average 30%. That's really important intelligence that can be fed back. In addition to that, you have the win-loss intelligence. So every time you win or lose a deal, let's actually do the deep dive and understand where we went wrong or where we went, and how can that continually feed back into product, feed back into marketing, etc. In addition to the 3 times coverage, they did see an 80% reduction in the amount of time that it takes to create battle cards. They have seen an increase in the win rate and sales performance of their team. Now, obviously, a large part of that is due to Airgentic's platform, Airgentic's sales team. They're exceptionally good at what they do. But they've told me having a tool like Playwise HQ has made a measurable difference to their win rate and allowed them to really shift early stage conversations with prospects forward to knock certain competitors on the head much easier and much, much quicker, and basically get them excluded from the evaluation. And in doing so, Airgentic win a higher percentage of the opportunities that they're going after. All this kind of then boils down to this change in mindset, this change in strategy, a strategic shift from reacting to competitors to anticipating them. Recently, we did a webinar where we also spoke about how a lot of sales teams are reluctant to mention competitors. They don't want to invite competitors into a process by mentioning their name. Obviously, if you're dealing with a business that is actually out in the market for a solution, there are going to be competitors. Acknowledging that changes the strategy you take. Instead of being reactive, you're proactive. You can say things like, when customers look at our solution, we also hear that they normally consider A, B, or C competitor. Are you looking at any of those? If they say yes, great, you can now double down on that and say, I understand that competitor X is really strong in this area, and they often position that they can deliver an ROI in this way. Is that something you're also looking at? Or is that something you've heard? You're essentially narrowing down to what they like about each competitor and their platform, how those platforms are positioning themselves and their ROI. And then because you know that, and because you've asked those questions, you can then flip it and turn that into an advantage for yourself. It's better to operate from this position of knowing rather than not knowing. And again, just harping back to Archie Hooper, co-founder, head of sales there. Before Playwise HQ, they were flying blind on a lot of deals. They were winning and they were losing, obviously, but they weren't able to spot their patterns. They weren't able to adjust their messaging. And because they didn't have this kind of real world insight, they weren't able to anticipate competitors in each deal. And when they popped up, they didn't have a defined strategy, a single source of truth that they could go to in terms of what are the types of reasons why we win, what are the reasons why we lose, and then with that knowledge, how do we structure this conversation to put ourselves in the best possible position to actually win. The key takeaway is that competitive intelligence needs to become a system. It's not a project. It's not a one-off thing. It's a process that constantly needs to evolve and adapt. And the traditional way of creating static PDF battle cards with manual processes that only get run once every 3 months, every 6 months, or every 12 months, it just doesn't match the commercial reality and the competitive reality that we have today. High growth teams like Airgentic are leaning into tools like Playwise HQ because they've realized that they need this kind of feedback loop, this system that constantly captures intelligence from real world opportunities, feeds it back into the battle card, makes the battle card more relevant every single time someone goes to it because there's always new intelligence. It becomes an operationalized process where the competitive intelligence that you have constantly evolves, constantly gets better, constantly improves. And then on top of that, because new competitors are constantly emerging in the market, how can you ensure coverage of them without needing to go to a team and ask for a new battle card that's going to take 3 or 6 months for them to write, and then by the time they write it, it's out of date? You start with AI, you get an amazing starting point that's relevant to your business, and then it evolves with the additional insight you add to it. So it was great to be able to share this case study with you from Airgentic. We do have a link to the written version down below in this video. If you're interested in transforming your own competitive intelligence platform, please check out playwisehq.com. You can scroll down and click to book a demo with us, in which case we'll do a personalized demo to show you exactly how Playwise can work for your company and your team. Thanks for watching.